Hello, everyone. My name is Emily, and welcome to English Club Podcast. I'm so happy you're here with me today. So, how is everyone doing? I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. You know, I'm sitting here in my studio, and I just had the most interesting morning. I was organizing my schedule for the week, writing down all the things I need to do, all my responsibilities. And as I was doing that, I thought, wow, this would be such a perfect topic for today's podcast. Before I tell you more about that, let me share a little bit about my morning. I woke up at my usual time, had a nice cup of coffee, and then I sat down to plan my week. I have so many different tasks to manage. I have podcasts to record, lessons to prepare, emails to answer, content to create. It's a lot. But you know what? I actually enjoy it. I like knowing what I'm responsible for. It gives me a sense of purpose. You know, when you have a job, any job, you have responsibilities. Responsibilities are the tasks and duties that you're expected to do. And today, we're going to talk all about work responsibilities, how to talk about them, how to describe them, and how to manage them. This is such a practical topic, and I'm really excited to share it with you. Okay. So before we dive into today's topic, please like and subscribe to our channel for more English learning podcasts. It really helps us grow and reach more English learners around the world. And if you enjoy this episode, please share it with your friends who are also learning English. Your support means everything to us. Thank you so much. Now, let me tell you about today's topic. Today, we're going to talk about your work responsibilities. We're going to learn the vocabulary you need to describe what you do at work. We're going to practice phrases for talking about your duties and tasks. We're going to discuss how to explain your role to others. And we're going to talk about how to manage your responsibilities effectively. This topic is so important because almost everyone works or will work at some point. And being able to talk about your work in English is a crucial skill. You might need to describe your job in a networking situation. You might need to explain your responsibilities in a performance review at work. You might need to talk about what you do when you meet new people. So let's learn how to do this confidently and naturally. Let me start by sharing a little bit about my own work responsibilities. Right now, my main job is creating English learning content. That's a very general description, right? But what does that actually mean? What do I do every day? Let me break it down for you. First, I plan podcast topics. I think about what would be useful and interesting for English learners. I research topics, I make notes about what I want to say. This planning takes time, but it's important because good content starts with good planning. Second, I write scripts or outlines for the podcasts. Sometimes I write everything out word for word. Other times I just make bullet points and speak more freely. It depends on the topic. Third, I record the podcasts. I sit here with my microphone and I talk to you. I try to speak clearly and naturally. Sometimes I have to record the same parts several times if I make a mistake or if I don't like how something sounds. Fourth, I edit the recordings. This means I listen to the audio and fix any problems. I might cut out mistakes, adjust the volume, or add music. Editing takes a lot of time, actually. Fifth, I publish the podcasts. I upload them to our YouTube channel. I write descriptions, I create thumbnails, I add tags so people can find the content. Sixth, I interact with listeners. I read comments, I answer questions, I respond to messages. This is one of my favorite parts because I get to connect with you. Seventh, I manage the schedule. I make sure I'm releasing content regularly. I plan ahead so I always have something ready to publish. And eighth, I handle administrative tasks. This means things like responding to emails, updating our website, tracking our progress, things like that. So you see, when I say I create English learning content, there's actually a lot involved. That's true for most jobs. The job title is simple, but the actual responsibilities are complex and varied. Now let's talk about vocabulary. When we discuss work responsibilities, there are some key words and phrases you need to know. Let's go through them. First, we have responsibility. This is the main word. A responsibility is something you're expected to do as part of your job. We can say, it's my responsibility to answer customer questions, or one of my responsibilities is managing the schedule. We also use the word duty. Duty is very similar to responsibility. It's a task you are required to do.
For example, my duties include filing paperwork and organizing meetings. Duty sounds a bit more formal than responsibility. Task is another important word. A task is a specific piece of work that needs to be done. For example, my first task this morning was to check my emails. Tasks are usually smaller and more specific than responsibilities. We use the phrase "in charge of" to describe what you're responsible for managing or overseeing. For example, I'm in charge of the marketing department, or she's in charge of training new employees. This phrase shows you have authority or control over something. We say responsible for with a similar meaning. I'm responsible for managing the budget, or he's responsible for customer relations. This shows what falls under your area of responsibility. We use the verb handle to talk about dealing with tasks. I handle all customer complaints, or she handles the company's social media accounts. Handle means you take care of something or manage it. We use the verb manage when talking about overseeing projects, teams, or processes. I manage a team of 5 people, or he manages the inventory system. Manage implies control and organization. We say coordinate when we're organizing activities or people to work together. I coordinate meetings between different departments, or she coordinates the logistics for events. Coordinate is about making sure things work together smoothly. We use oversee when we supervise or watch over something to make sure it's done correctly. I oversee the production process, or he oversees quality control. Oversee is often used by managers or supervisors. We say deal with when talking about handling problems or situations. I deal with difficult customers, or she deals with technical issues. Deal with suggests you're handling challenges or problems. We use the phrase take care of for handling tasks or responsibilities. I take care of the scheduling, or he takes care of equipment maintenance. This is a casual but very common phrase. All of these words and phrases help you describe what you do at work. Let's practice using them in context. Imagine someone asks you, "What do you do at your job?" Here are some example answers using this vocabulary. I'm responsible for managing the front desk. My main duties include greeting visitors, answering phone calls, and scheduling appointments. I'm in charge of the company's website. I handle all updates, fix technical problems, and make sure everything runs smoothly. I manage a team of customer service representatives. I oversee their work, coordinate their schedules, and deal with any escalated issues. I take care of inventory. This includes ordering supplies, tracking what we have in stock, and making sure we never run out of essential items. See how these descriptions give a clear picture of what someone does? That's what you want to aim for when describing your own responsibilities. Let me tell you a story about when I first started working. My very first job was in a coffee shop. I was a barista. That's the person who makes coffee drinks. When people asked me what I did, I would just say, I work at a coffee shop. That didn't really explain my responsibilities. My manager taught me how to describe my job better. She said, when people ask what you do, tell them specifically. So I learned to say, I'm a barista at a coffee shop. I make coffee drinks, serve customers, handle the cash register, and keep the work area clean. That's much more informative, right? Those were my main responsibilities. Making coffee drinks was the obvious one, but I also had to learn the cash register system. I had to handle money accurately. I had to keep track of inventory and let my manager know when supplies were running low. I had to maintain cleanliness and food safety standards. I had to provide good customer service, which meant being friendly, patient, and helpful, even when customers were difficult. That job taught me that even seemingly simple jobs have many different responsibilities, and it taught me how important it is to be able to describe what you do clearly. Now, let's talk about different types of responsibilities you might have at work. Responsibilities generally fall into several categories. Understanding these categories will help you organize your thoughts when describing your job. First, there are core responsibilities. These are the main tasks that define your job. They're the reason you were hired. For a teacher, core responsibilities might include planning lessons, teaching classes, and grading assignments. For a salesperson, core responsibilities might include contacting potential clients, demonstrating products, and closing sales. Your core responsibilities are what you spend most of your time doing. Second, there are administrative responsibilities. These are the organizational and paperwork tasks that support your main work. This might include answering emails, attending meetings, filling out reports, updating databases, or organizing files. Almost every job has some administrative responsibilities, even if that's not the main focus of the job. Third, there are collaborative responsibilities. These involve working with other people. This might include attending team meetings, communicating with other departments, coordinating with colleagues, or participating in group projects. In modern workplaces, collaboration is increasingly important. Fourth, there are developmental responsibilities. These involve improving yourself or your skills. This might include attending training sessions, learning new software, staying updated on industry trends, or pursuing professional certifications. Many employers expect you to continuously develop your skills. Fifth, there are supervisory responsibilities if you manage other people. This includes training staff, evaluating performance, delegating tasks, and providing feedback. Not everyone has supervisory responsibilities, but if you do, they're an important part of your job. Sixth, there are maintenance responsibilities. These involve keeping systems, equipment, or processes running smoothly. This might include equipment maintenance, troubleshooting problems, updating systems, or ensuring compliance with regulations. Let me give you an example of how these categories work together. Let's say you're a restaurant manager. Your core responsibilities might be overseeing daily operations and ensuring customer satisfaction. Your administrative responsibilities might include managing schedules, tracking inventory, and handling payroll. Your collaborative responsibilities might include coordinating with the kitchen staff and communicating with suppliers. Your developmental responsibilities might include staying updated on food safety regulations and learning new management techniques. Your supervisory responsibilities would include training servers and managing staff performance. And your maintenance responsibilities might include ensuring equipment is working properly and the restaurant meets health codes. See how one job involves many different types of responsibilities? This is true for most positions. Now, let me teach you how to structure a description of your responsibilities. When someone asks you about your job, you want to give a clear, organized answer.
Here's a good structure to follow. Start with your job title and a brief overview. For example, I'm a marketing coordinator at a software company. I'm responsible for promoting our products and managing our online presence. Then, describe your main responsibilities. Use phrases like, my main responsibilities include, or my primary duties are. List 2 to 4 core responsibilities. Don't list everything you do, just the most important things. If relevant, mention who you work with or who you report to. For example, I work closely with the sales team, or I report directly to the marketing director. You can also mention any special projects or additional responsibilities. For example, I'm also currently working on a rebranding project, or I sometimes help with recruiting new team members. Let me give you a complete example. Imagine someone asks, what do you do at work? I'm an office administrator at a law firm. My main responsibilities include managing office supplies, coordinating meetings, and handling client communications. I work with all the attorneys in the firm, and I report to the office manager. I'm also currently organizing our transition to a new case management system. That's a clear, comprehensive answer. It gives the listener a good understanding of what you do without overwhelming them with details. Let me share another personal story. A few years ago, I was working as an English language coordinator at a university. My job was quite complex with many different responsibilities. When people asked what I did, I used to struggle to explain it clearly. I would start listing everything. I teach, I write curriculum, I train teachers, I organize events, I meet with students, I handle budgets, I communicate with parents. By the time I finished, people looked confused and overwhelmed. Then a colleague gave me advice. She said, Emily, you're giving too much information. Just give them the big picture first. If they want more details, they'll ask questions. So I changed my approach. I started saying, I coordinate the English language program at the university. I'm responsible for curriculum development, teacher training, and student support. That's it. Short, clear, and to the point. If people wanted to know more, they would ask follow-up questions, and then I could provide more details. This taught me an important lesson about communication. Sometimes less is more. You don't need to tell people everything.
Give them enough information to understand the basics, and let them ask if they want to know more. Now let's talk about some common verbs we use to describe work responsibilities. These verbs are very useful, so pay attention to them. We use create or develop when talking about making something new. I create marketing materials, or she develops training programs. These verbs show you're producing something. We use implement when putting plans or systems into action. I implement me procedures, or he implements software updates. Implement means to make something happen or put it into practice. We use maintain when keeping something in good condition or continuing something. I maintain the company database, or she maintains relationships with clients. Maintain is about ongoing care and attention. We use monitor when watching or checking something regularly. I monitor website traffic, or he monitors employee performance. Monitor means to observe and track something over time. We use prepare when getting something ready. I prepare reports for management,
or she prepares presentations for clients. Prepare is about making something ready for use. We use process when handling information, documents, or requests in a systematic way. I process customer orders, or he processes insurance claims. Process suggests a methodical, step-by-step approach. We use review when examining something carefully. I review contract proposals, or she reviews financial statements. Review means to look at something thoroughly to check it or assess it. We use support when helping people or systems. I support users with technical issues, or she supports the sales team with research. Support is about providing assistance. We use train when teaching people skills or knowledge. I train new employees, or he trains staff on safety procedures. Train is specifically about education and skill development. We use update when making something current or adding new information. I update the company website, or she updates client records. Update is about keeping information fresh and current. Let's practice using these verbs in sentences about responsibilities. I create social media content for our company's online presence. She develops strategies to improve customer retention. I implement new quality control procedures in the production line. He maintains the inventory management system. I monitor sales figures and report trends to management.
She prepares monthly financial reports for the board of directors. I process job applications and coordinate interviews. He reviews project proposals and provides feedback. I support clients with technical troubleshooting. She trains volunteers on proper procedures. I update our customer database weekly. Notice how these verbs make your description of responsibilities sound professional and clear. They're much more specific and impressive than general verbs like do or work on. Now let's talk about how to discuss your responsibilities in different contexts. The way you describe your job might change depending on who you're talking to and why. In a casual social situation, you might give a brief, general description. Someone at a party asks, "What do you do?" You might say, "I work in human resources. I help with recruiting and employee development." That's enough for casual conversation. In a professional networking situation, you might give more detail and highlight impressive aspects of your role. Someone at a conference asks about your work. You might say, "I'm a senior HR specialist focusing on talent acquisition and organizational development. I lead recruitment strategies for our company's expansion and design training programs to develop leadership skills across the organization." This shows your expertise and makes you memorable. In a job interview, you would give detailed, achievement-focused descriptions. The interviewer asks about your current responsibilities. You might say, "In my current role as project coordinator, I'm responsible for managing multiple concurrent projects. I coordinate cross-functional teams, track project timelines and budgets, and communicate progress to stakeholders. Last year, I successfully delivered 8 major projects on time and under budget." This shows not just what you do, but how well you do it. On your resume or CV, you would write concise bullet points highlighting key responsibilities and achievements. Under your job title, you might write, "Managed a team of 5 customer service representatives, implemented a new ticketing system that improved response time by 30%, trained staff on customer service best practices." Resume description should be clear, specific, and show impact. The key is to adjust your level of detail and emphasis based on the situation. Always be honest, but you can emphasize different aspects depending on the context.
Let me tell you about a time when I had to describe my responsibilities in an interview. I was applying for a position as a teacher trainer. The interviewer asked me to describe my current responsibilities as a teacher. I could have just said, "I teach English classes," but that wouldn't have been impressive or informative. Instead, I said, "I teach multiple levels of English, from beginner to advanced. I'm responsible for developing lesson plans that align with our curriculum standards while meeting the diverse needs of my students. I also assess student progress through various methods, including tests, presentations, and projects. Beyond teaching, I mentor new teachers in our department and contribute to curriculum development meetings. Last semester, my students showed an average improvement of 20% on standardized assessments." See the difference? The second description shows the full scope of my responsibilities and demonstrates my impact. It made me a much stronger candidate. Now, let's discuss how to talk about changes in responsibilities. Sometimes your responsibilities change over time. You might take on new tasks. You might delegate old tasks to someone else. You might get a promotion with expanded responsibilities. Knowing how to talk about these changes is important. We use phrases like, "I now also handle," or "I recently took on," to describe new responsibilities.
For example, I now also handle social media marketing in addition to my other duties, or I recently took on the responsibility of training new staff members. We use phrases like, I no longer, or I've handed over, to describe responsibilities you've taken up. For example, I no longer do data entry since we hired an assistant, or I've handed over the scheduling duties to our coordinator. We use phrases like, my role has expanded, or I've been given more responsibility, to describe growth in your position. For example, my role has expanded to include budget management, or I've been given more responsibility for client relationships. Let me give you a real example. At one point in my career, I was a regular English teacher. Then I was asked to take on some additional responsibilities. Here's how I would describe that change. When I first started, I was primarily teaching classes. However, over the past year, my responsibilities have expanded significantly.
I now also coordinate the placement testing for new students, mentor new teachers in the program, and contribute to curriculum development. I've handed over one of my beginner classes to make time for these new duties. This expanded role has given me the opportunity to have a broader impact on the program. This description shows progression and growth, which is impressive to employers and colleagues. Now, let's talk about how to discuss responsibilities when they're challenging or stressful. Sometimes people ask, how's work going? And you want to be honest about difficulties without complaining too much. Here's how to do that professionally. You can acknowledge challenges while staying positive. For example, it's been quite busy lately. I'm juggling several major projects, but I'm learning a lot. Or, I've had to take on some additional responsibilities temporarily, which is challenging, but I'm managing okay. You can be specific about challenges without sounding negative. For example, one of my biggest challenges right now is coordinating between different departments with different priorities. It requires a lot of communication and flexibility. This acknowledges difficulty without complaining. You can mention what you're doing to address challenges. For example, I've been feeling overwhelmed with my workload, so I've started prioritizing more carefully and delegating where I can. This shows problem solving rather than just complaining. The key is to be honest but professional. It's okay to acknowledge that work is hard sometimes, but you want to show that you're capable of handling it. Let me tell you about a challenging period in my work. There was a time when I was teaching full-time, training new teachers, and developing new curriculum materials all at once. It was too much. I was stressed and exhausted. When people asked how work was going, I would say, honestly, I'm quite busy right now. I have a lot on my plate with teaching, training, and curriculum work. I'm working on better time management and setting clearer boundaries so I don't burn out. I'm also talking with my supervisor about possibly redistributing some responsibilities. This was honest without being negative. It acknowledged the challenge, showed what I was doing about it, and indicated I was communicating with my supervisor. That's much better than just saying, work is terrible, I have too much to do, I hate it.
Now let's discuss how to talk about responsibilities you enjoy versus ones you don't enjoy as much. Every job has parts we like and parts we like less. It's okay to acknowledge this. When talking about responsibilities you enjoy, you can use phrases like, I really enjoy, I find it rewarding, I love the challenge of, or one of my favorite parts of my job is. For example, I really enjoy working directly with clients, or I find it rewarding to see new employees develop their skills through the training I provide. When talking about responsibilities you don't enjoy as much, be diplomatic. Don't be too negative, especially in professional contexts. You can use phrases like, it's not my favorite part, but it's necessary. I find it challenging, but I understand its importance. Or, if I'm honest, I prefer other aspects of my role, but I do it thoroughly. For example, administrative paperwork isn't my favorite part of the job, but I understand it's necessary for keeping everything organized. You never want to completely badmouth any part of your job, especially in professional settings. Even if you hate doing expense reports, don't say, I hate doing expense reports. They're a waste of time. Instead, say something like, expense reports aren't the most exciting part of my job, but I make sure to complete them accurately and on time. Let me share my own experience with this. In my current work, I absolutely love the creative parts. I love planning content, recording podcasts, and interacting with listeners. I find these parts energizing and fulfilling. However, I'm not as enthusiastic about the administrative side. Dealing with technical issues, managing file organization, tracking statistics, these tasks don't excite me. But I know they're important for running a successful channel. If someone asks me about this, I might say,
The creative aspects of my work are definitely my favorite. I love developing content and connecting with learners. The administrative side isn't quite as exciting for me, but I've learned to be efficient with those tasks so I can spend more time on the creative work I enjoy. I've also tried to improve systems to make the admin work easier. This is honest while staying professional. It shows self-awareness and a practical approach to managing all aspects of my work. Now, let's talk about prioritizing responsibilities. When you have many responsibilities, you need to prioritize. That means deciding which tasks are most important or urgent.
Being able to talk about how you prioritize shows that you're organized and strategic. We use phrases like, I prioritize, I focus on first, my top priority is, or I make sure to. For example, I prioritize customer requests because they're time sensitive, or my top priority each morning is checking emails and responding to urgent messages. We also talk about urgent versus important. Urgent tasks need to be done soon. Important tasks have significant impact. The best approach is to focus on tasks that are both urgent and important first, then important but not urgent, then urgent but not important, and finally things that are neither urgent nor important. Let me give you an example of how you might describe your prioritization approach. Imagine someone asks how you manage your many responsibilities. I've learned to prioritize based on urgency and impact. I start each day by identifying what absolutely needs to be done today. Those are my urgent tasks. Then I look at my important long-term projects and make sure I'm making progress on those, even if they're not urgent yet. I try to avoid spending too much time on things that are urgent but not actually important, and I've learned to say no to tasks that aren't aligned with my core responsibilities. This shows thoughtful, strategic thinking about work responsibilities. I want to share a lesson I learned about prioritization. Early in my career, I tried to do everything perfectly. Every task, no matter how small, got my full attention and effort. But I quickly realized this was unsustainable. Unsustainable means you can't keep doing it long term. A mentor told me something that changed my approach. She said, Emily, not everything deserves an A+ effort. Some things just need to be done adequately so you can focus your best work on what really matters. Learn to distinguish between what needs to be perfect and what just needs to be done. This was liberating. I started asking myself, what really matters here? If I'm writing an important report for my supervisor, that deserves careful attention. If I'm filling out a routine form, I just need to be accurate and efficient, not perfect. This approach has helped me manage my responsibilities much more effectively. I encourage you to think about this too. What really needs your best effort, and what just needs to be done competently? Now, let's talk about how to discuss delegating responsibilities. Delegate means to assign tasks to other people.
If you're in a management or leadership position, delegating is an important responsibility in itself. We use phrases like, I assign, I delegate, I distribute tasks, or I ask team members to handle. For example, I delegate routine tasks to my assistant so I can focus on strategic planning, or I distribute the workload among team members based on their strengths and availability. Good delegation is about matching tasks to people's skills and providing clear instructions. When describing your delegation approach, you might say, I make sure to match tasks with people's skills and interests. I provide clear instructions and deadlines, and I'm available if they have questions, but I trust them to do the work independently. Even if you're not a manager, you might sometimes delegate tasks or coordinate with colleagues to share work. You might say, when we have large projects, I coordinate with my teammates to divide up the work efficiently. Or, I'm not in a management position, but I often take the lead in organizing how our team divides up tasks. I remember when I first had supervisory responsibilities and had to start delegating. I found it really hard. I felt like I should just do everything myself because I knew how I wanted it done, but this quickly became overwhelming. My manager told me, Emily, learning to delegate is part of learning to be an effective leader. You can't do everything yourself. And besides, when you delegate, you're giving other people opportunities to learn and grow. That perspective shift helped me. I started seeing delegation not as giving away my work, but as developing my team. I got better at explaining what I needed, trusting others to do quality work, and providing feedback to help them improve. This made me a better leader and made my work life more manageable. Now let's discuss how to talk about work-life balance in relation to your responsibilities. Work-life balance means having a healthy balance between work and your personal life. Your responsibilities at work shouldn't completely consume your life.
When discussing work-life balance, you can say things like, I try to maintain boundaries between work and personal time, or I'm working on being more efficient so I don't have to take work home, or I make sure to disconnect from work emails after hours. You might also mention specific strategies.
For example, I block out time on my calendar for focused work so I can be more productive during work hours. Or I've learned to say no to additional responsibilities when I'm already at capacity. It's becoming more acceptable to openly discuss work-life balance, even in professional contexts. Employers are increasingly recognizing that burned-out employees aren't productive employees. I've personally struggled with work-life balance. Because I work for myself and I'm passionate about my work, I tend to work too much. I'll find myself working evenings and weekends, checking emails constantly, always thinking about projects. I've had to consciously set boundaries. I now have specific work hours. I try not to check work emails on weekends. I make sure to schedule time for exercise, hobbies, and friends. This isn't always easy, especially when I have deadlines or exciting projects. But I've learned that taking time away from work actually makes me more creative and productive when I am working. If someone asks me about work-life balance now, I might say, I'm passionate about my work, which sometimes makes it hard to step away. But I've learned that I need downtime to stay creative and avoid burnout. I try to maintain clear boundaries about when I'm working and when I'm not. It's an ongoing challenge, but it's important to me. Let's talk about how to discuss learning new responsibilities. Sometimes you take on responsibilities you've never done before. You're learning as you go. This is normal and actually good for your professional development. When discussing new responsibilities you're learning, you can say, I'm currently learning to. I'm developing skills in. I'm still getting comfortable with. Or I'm building experience in. For example, I'm currently learning to manage budgets, which is a new responsibility for me. Or I'm developing my skills in public speaking as I take on more presentation responsibilities. You can acknowledge that you're learning while still expressing confidence. For example, I'm new to project management, but I'm learning quickly and I've already successfully completed 2 small projects. Or, this responsibility is outside my previous experience, but I'm committed to developing expertise in this area. Employers often value people who are willing to learn and grow. Admitting you're learning something new isn't a weakness as long as you're showing effort and progress. I'll give you a personal example. When I started this podcast, I had no experience with audio recording or editing. I had to learn everything from scratch. The technical aspects were completely new to me. If someone asked about my responsibilities early on, I would say, I'm creating educational podcasts, which involves everything from content planning to audio production. The technical side is new to me, and I'm learning as I go, but I've already improved significantly, and I'm committed to continuing to develop these skills. This was honest about my learning curve, but also showed my commitment and progress. And you know what? Most people were impressed that I was willing to learn something completely new, even though it was hard. Now, let's discuss how to handle situations where your responsibilities aren't clear. Sometimes jobs have vague or unclear expectations. You're not quite sure what you're supposed to be doing. This is frustrating, but it happens, especially in smaller companies or new positions. If you're in this situation, the best approach is to seek clarification. You can say to your supervisor, I want to make sure I'm focusing on the right priorities. Can we clarify my main responsibilities? Or, I've noticed some overlap between my role and another team member's role. Can we clarify who's responsible for what? Asking for clarity isn't a sign of weakness. It shows you want to do your job well and use your time effectively. When describing unclear responsibilities to others, you might say, my role is still being defined as the company grows. Or, I'm working with my manager to clarify priorities and boundaries for my position. I experienced this when I worked for a startup company. Startup companies are new, small companies that are still developing. At startups, roles are often fluid and responsibilities can be unclear. I was hired as a content writer, but I also ended up doing social media, customer support, some graphic design, and even occasionally helping with office management. My job description and my actual responsibilities didn't match at all. At first, I didn't mind because I was learning diverse skills, but eventually it became overwhelming because I didn't know what to prioritize. Everything felt urgent and important. I finally sat down with my supervisor and said, I want to be helpful and flexible, but I'm finding it difficult to know what my priorities should be because I'm being asked to do so many different things. Can we clarify what my core responsibilities should be and how I should handle requests for other tasks? This conversation was helpful. We agreed on my primary responsibilities, and we established a process for handling additional requests. This made my work life much more manageable. The lesson is, if your responsibilities are unclear, speak up. Don't just struggle silently. Most supervisors appreciate employees who seek clarity so they can be more effective. Now, let's talk about discussing responsibilities during performance reviews. Performance reviews are meetings where your supervisor evaluates your work. This is an important time to talk about your responsibilities. Before a performance review, prepare by listing your main responsibilities and specific accomplishments related to each one. For example, under customer service responsibilities, you might note, I maintained a customer satisfaction rating above 95%, and I successfully resolved over 500 customer inquiries. During the review, be ready to discuss each responsibility and how you fulfilled it. You might say, regarding my responsibility for managing the filing system, I've implemented a new organization method that has reduced document retrieval time by 40%. Performance reviews are also a time to discuss whether your responsibilities are appropriate. If you're overwhelmed, you might say, I'm committed to doing excellent work, but I'm concerned that the current volume of responsibilities is affecting the quality I can deliver. Can we discuss prioritization or possibly redistributing some tasks? If you want more responsibility, you might say, I feel confident in my current responsibilities and I'm ready to take on more challenge. Are there additional areas where I could contribute? I remember a performance review where I was nervous because I knew I'd been struggling with my workload. I'd been late on some deadlines and I was worried about being criticized. My supervisor did mention the missed deadlines, but she asked, what's causing this? Is it time management or is it the volume of work? I was honest. I said, I think it's partly my time management, which I'm working to improve. But honestly, I also think the volume has increased significantly in the past 6 months without a corresponding increase in resources or support. My supervisor appreciated my honesty and my acknowledgement that I needed to improve my own efficiency.
We discussed solutions, including hiring a part-time assistant to help with routine tasks so I could focus on higher priority work. The review ended up being constructive because I was honest and solution-focused rather than defensive or just complaining. Let's discuss how responsibilities relate to career advancement. When you're thinking about promotions or moving to higher positions, you need to think about how your current responsibilities prepare you for greater responsibilities. To advance in your career, you often need to show you can handle responsibilities beyond your current role. You might volunteer for challenging projects, take initiative, or ask for stretch assignments. Stretch assignments are tasks that are a bit beyond your current skill level, pushing you to grow. When discussing your readiness for advancement, you might say, in my current role, I've successfully managed increasingly complex responsibilities. I believe I'm ready to take on a leadership position where I can apply these skills at a larger scale. You want to show a progression of growing responsibilities. For example, when I started, I was responsible for managing my own client accounts. Over time, I began mentoring new account managers. Now, I coordinate the entire team's client portfolio. I believe the next logical step is a management position. This shows a clear progression and readiness for more responsibility. I can share my own experience with this. When I was a teacher, I wanted to move into a teacher-trainer role. To prepare for this, I actively took on additional responsibilities that would develop relevant skills. I volunteered to mentor new teachers. I presented at staff meetings. I led a committee on curriculum development. When a training position opened up, I could point to these experiences and say, through these responsibilities, I've developed skills in training, presentation, and curriculum design. I've also learned to see the program from a broader perspective beyond my own classroom. This has prepared me to step into a training role. The strategy worked. I got the position because I demonstrated I could handle the responsibilities through the additional tasks I'd taken on. The lesson is, if you want to advance, look for opportunities to take on responsibilities that will develop the skills you'll need in your target position. Now, let's talk about discussing responsibilities when you're job searching.
When you're applying for jobs or interviewing, you'll need to talk about your current or past responsibilities to show you're qualified for the new position. On your resume or CV, list responsibilities using action verbs and specific details. Instead of responsible for customers, write managed relationships with over 50 key accounts, maintained customer satisfaction rating of 98%. Instead of handled social media, write developed and implemented social media strategy across 4 platforms, increasing engagement by 100% over 6 months. In cover letters, connect your responsibilities to the job you're applying for. For example, in my current role, I'm responsible for project coordination and team communication, skills that directly align with the project manager position you're advertising. In interviews, use the STAR method to discuss your responsibilities and achievements. STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. Describe a situation, explain what your responsibility or task was, describe what action you took, and share the result. For example, the interviewer asks, "Tell me about a time you handled a difficult responsibility." You might answer, "In my previous role, I was responsible for managing a project that was behind schedule and over budget. This is the situation. My task was to get it back on track. This is the task. I reorganized the team, renegotiated with vendors, and implemented daily progress meetings. This is the action. As a result, we completed the project only 2 weeks late instead of 2 months late, and we came in under the revised budget. This is the result." This method helps you give complete, impressive answers about your responsibilities. Let me tell you about an interview where I used this approach effectively. I was interviewing for a coordinator position. The interviewer asked, "Can you tell me about a time you had to manage multiple competing priorities?" I answered, "In my previous role, I was responsible for teaching a full schedule of classes while also coordinating a major curriculum revision. This is the situation. I needed to ensure my teaching quality didn't suffer while also moving the curriculum project forward. This is the task. I created a detailed schedule allocating specific times for teaching prep and curriculum work. I delegated some curriculum tasks to committee members, and I communicated regularly with my supervisor about progress and challenges. This is the action." As a result, my teaching evaluations remained strong, and we completed the curriculum revision ahead of deadline. This is the result. The interviewer was impressed because I didn't just say I'm good at managing priorities. I gave a specific example with clear actions and results. This brings me to an important point about discussing responsibilities. Specificity matters. Don't just say you're responsible for something. Give details, give examples, give results when possible. Instead of "I'm responsible for marketing," say "I'm responsible for digital marketing strategy. I manage our social media presence across 5 platforms, oversee our email marketing campaigns, and analyze metrics to optimize our approach. Last quarter, our engagement increased by 40%. See the difference? The second version paints a clear picture of what you actually do and demonstrates impact. Now, let's discuss a sensitive topic. What if you're doing work that's not part of your official responsibilities? This happens often. You're asked to take on tasks outside your job description, or you end up doing work that should be someone else's responsibility. This can be tricky to navigate. On one hand, being helpful and flexible is good. It shows initiative and teamwork. On the other hand, if you're consistently doing work that's not your responsibility without recognition or compensation, that's not fair. If this happens occasionally, it's usually fine to help out. You might say, "This isn't normally my responsibility, but I'm happy to help this time." This acknowledges it's extra while showing you're a team player. If it happens regularly, you need to address it. You might say to your supervisor, "I've noticed I'm frequently being asked to handle tasks in Area X, which isn't part of my official responsibilities. I'm willing to help, but I wanted to discuss whether this should be formalized as part of my role and whether that might affect my workload or compensation." This is professional and fair. You're not refusing to help, but you're also making sure your actual responsibilities are recognized. I experienced this in a job where I was hired as a teacher, but I ended up doing a lot of administrative work that wasn't part of my job description. At first, I didn't mind because I wanted to be helpful, but after several months, I was spending half my time on admin work, which left less time for teaching prep, and I wasn't being recognized or compensated for this extra work. I scheduled a meeting with my supervisor and said, "I want to discuss my responsibilities. I've been handling significant administrative duties in addition to my teaching responsibilities. I'm happy to contribute, but I think we need to either formalize this as part of my role with adjusted expectations for my teaching load, or find another solution for handling the admin work." My supervisor hadn't realized how much extra work I was doing. We agreed to hire a part-time administrative assistant, which freed me up to focus on teaching. The lesson is, it's okay to set boundaries about your responsibilities. Being flexible is good, but you also need to advocate for yourself. Let me teach you some more advanced vocabulary for discussing responsibilities. These phrases will make you sound more professional and sophisticated. We can use the phrase take ownership of to describe taking full responsibility for something. For example, I take ownership of all client communications, or she takes ownership of the team's results. This phrase implies responsibility, accountability, and commitment. We can say spearhead or champion when describing leading an initiative or project. I spearheaded the transition to remote work, or she champions diversity and inclusion efforts. These verbs show leadership and initiative. We can use facilitate when describing making something easier or helping something happen. I facilitate communication between departments, or he facilitates weekly team meetings. Facilitate is a professional way to say you help things run smoothly. We can say streamline when describing making processes more efficient. I streamlined the approval process, or she streamlined inventory management. This shows you improve systems. We can use optimize when describing making something work as well as possible. I optimize our website for search engines, or he optimizes team performance. Optimize is a sophisticated way to talk about improvement. We can say navigate when describing handling complex or difficult situations. I navigate challenging client relationships, or she navigates changing regulations in our industry. Navigate implies skill in handling challenges. We can use cultivate when describing developing something over time. I cultivate relationships with key stakeholders, or he cultivates a positive team culture. Cultivate suggests careful, intentional development.
Let's practice using these advanced terms in sentences about responsibilities. I've taken ownership of our customer retention strategy, and I'm fully accountable for the results. I spearheaded the initiative to implement new project management software across the organization. I facilitate collaboration between our design and development teams to ensure smooth project delivery. I streamlined our onboarding process, reducing the time to onboard new employees from 2 weeks to 1 week. I optimize our email marketing campaigns based on data analysis and A/B testing. I navigate complex stakeholder relationships to ensure all parties are aligned on project goals. I cultivate partnerships with community organizations to expand our company's local presence. Using vocabulary like this makes you sound experienced and professional. Now, let's discuss how your responsibilities might vary based on your seniority level. Entry-level positions, mid-level positions, and senior-level positions typically have different types of responsibilities. At the entry level, your responsibilities are usually more specific and task-focused. You're executing tasks that others have planned. You might say, I'm responsible for processing data entry, responding to customer inquiries, and assisting senior team members with projects. The focus is on doing specific tasks well and learning. At the mid-level, your responsibilities become broader and more strategic. You're not just executing tasks, you're planning and making decisions. You might say, I'm responsible for managing the customer service team, developing strategies to improve customer satisfaction, and representing our department in cross-functional meetings. You have more autonomy and decision-making power. At the senior level, your responsibilities are strategic and high-level. You're setting direction, making important decisions, and leading others. You might say, I'm responsible for setting the overall strategy for our division, leading a team of managers, and ensuring we meet our revenue targets. Senior responsibilities focus on leadership, vision, and organizational impact. Understanding these levels helps you describe your responsibilities in context and also helps you understand what additional responsibilities you might take on as you advance. I've experienced this progression in my own career. When I first started teaching, my responsibilities were very specific: plan lessons, teach classes, grade assignments. I wasn't involved in bigger decisions about curriculum or program direction. As I gained experience and moved into a senior teacher role, my responsibilities expanded. I still taught, but I also mentored new teachers, contributed to curriculum development, and had input on program policies. When I moved into a coordinator role, my responsibilities became much more strategic. I was setting vision for the program, making hiring decisions, managing budgets, and representing the program to university leadership. Each level required different skills and perspectives. The responsibilities grew not just in quantity, but in complexity and scope. Let's talk about how to discuss responsibilities when working remotely or in hybrid situations.
Remote work is becoming more common, and it affects how we talk about responsibilities. When working remotely, you might need to emphasize how you manage your responsibilities independently. You might say, I'm responsible for all the same tasks as my office-based colleagues, and I've developed strong self-management skills to stay productive while working remotely. Or, I manage my responsibilities using digital tools to collaborate with my team and track my progress. You might also have specific remote-related responsibilities. I'm responsible for maintaining clear communication with my remote team through regular video calls and updates. Or, I ensure I'm available during core business hours despite working from a different time zone. Some responsibilities might be easier or harder remotely. You might say, some aspects of my role, like focused writing work, are actually easier to do remotely without office distractions. Other aspects, like team brainstorming, require more intentional effort to do effectively in a virtual environment. I work remotely now, creating this podcast from my home studio. My responsibilities haven't fundamentally changed compared to if I were working in an office, but how I manage them has changed. I'm responsible for my own schedule management. There's no one checking when I arrive or leave. I'm responsible for my own productivity. I'm responsible for maintaining communication with partners and collaborators despite not seeing them in person. I'm responsible for creating a professional work environment at home. If someone asks about my work responsibilities, I might mention, I work independently from my home studio, which means I'm responsible for managing all aspects of production without the support structure of an office environment. This requires strong self-discipline and organization, skills I've developed over time. Let's discuss how to talk about shared responsibilities or cross-functional responsibilities. Cross-functional means working across different departments or teams. When you share responsibility with others, you might say, I share responsibility for this project with the design team, or I collaborate with multiple departments on this initiative. This shows you work well with others and can coordinate effectively. For cross-functional responsibilities, you might say, I work cross-functionally with marketing, sales, and product teams to ensure our messaging is aligned, or my role requires close collaboration with stakeholders from various departments. These types of responsibilities are increasingly common in modern workplaces, where teams need to work together across traditional boundaries. I have many cross-functional responsibilities. When creating podcast content, I need to think about educational value, which is my primary area, but I also need to consider technical production quality, marketing and reach, and user experience. While I might not be an expert in all these areas, I need to coordinate and make decisions that consider all these perspectives. If someone asks about this, I might say, my work requires me to think cross-functionally. I need to balance educational quality with technical production standards with audience growth strategies. This means I'm constantly coordinating different priorities and perspectives to create the best possible content. Now, let's talk about discussing future responsibilities. Maybe you're about to take on new responsibilities, or you're working toward responsibilities you'd like to have. For upcoming responsibilities, you might say, I'll be taking on budget management responsibilities starting next month, or I'm transitioning into a role with increased leadership responsibilities. Use future tense to talk about things that haven't happened yet. For responsibilities you're working toward, you might say, I'm developing skills to prepare for project management responsibilities, or I'm working toward taking on more client-facing responsibilities. This shows ambition and forward planning. You can also discuss how your responsibilities might evolve. My responsibilities are expected to expand as the company grows, or as I develop expertise in this area, I anticipate taking on more strategic responsibilities. Looking at my own work, I can talk about future responsibilities I'm planning to take on. For example, I might say, currently, I focus primarily on creating podcast content. However, I'm planning to expand into creating video content as well, which will require developing new technical skills and taking on additional production responsibilities. I'm also working toward building a team, which will add management responsibilities to my role. This shows I'm thinking strategically about the future of my work. Let me give you one more comprehensive example of how you might describe all your responsibilities if someone asks for a complete overview. Imagine someone says, "Can you tell me everything you're responsible for in your job?" Here's how you might structure your answer. Sure, I'm a marketing coordinator for a tech company. My core responsibilities center on digital marketing and brand management. On the content side, I'm responsible for creating all our social media content, writing blog posts, and developing marketing emails. I plan our content calendar and ensure we're posting consistently across all platforms. I also manage our paid advertising campaigns. I'm responsible for setting up ads, monitoring their performance, adjusting targeting and budgets, and reporting results to management. Another major area is analytics. I'm responsible for tracking all our marketing metrics, identifying trends, and making recommendations based on data. I prepare monthly reports for our marketing director. I work closely with the sales team. I'm responsible for creating marketing materials they can use in their sales process, and I coordinate marketing support for major sales initiatives. I also handle some event coordination. When we attend conferences or host webinars, I'm responsible for managing logistics and promotional materials. Finally, I manage relationships with external vendors. We work with a few freelance designers and a PR agency, and I'm responsible for coordinating with them and ensuring deliverables meet our standards. Beyond my core responsibilities, I'm also involved in strategic planning meetings where I provide input on overall marketing direction. See how this answer is comprehensive but organized?
It covers different types of responsibilities while giving specific examples of what each area involves. Now I want to share some final thoughts about work responsibilities. First, remember that your responsibilities are not your identity. Yes, what you do at work is important, but you are more than your job title or your task list. Don't let work responsibilities consume your entire sense of self-worth. Second, it's okay for responsibilities to change and evolve. Your responsibilities today might be completely different from your responsibilities 5 years from now. This is normal and healthy. Be open to growth and change. Third, communicate about your responsibilities. If they're unclear, ask for clarity. If they're overwhelming, communicate that. If you want more responsibility, say so. Don't suffer in silence or hope people will just figure things out. Fourth, be proud of your responsibilities, whatever they are. Every job involves important work. Whether you're managing a company or cleaning offices, you're contributing something valuable. The specific tasks might be different, but all work has dignity. Fifth, keep developing skills related to your responsibilities. The better you are at what you do, the more satisfied and successful you'll be. Always be learning and improving. And finally, remember that how you handle your responsibilities says a lot about your character. Reliability, thoroughness, initiative, integrity, these qualities show up in how you approach your work responsibilities. Take pride in doing your work well, regardless of what that work is. I hope today's podcast has helped you understand how to talk about work responsibilities in English. We've covered so much: vocabulary, phrases, different contexts for discussing responsibilities, strategies for managing responsibilities, and how to present your responsibilities professionally. The key takeaways are: be specific when describing what you do. Use professional vocabulary to sound confident and competent. Adjust your level of detail based on the context. Be honest about challenges while staying professional, and always be learning and developing in your role. Remember, being able to discuss your work responsibilities clearly is a valuable professional skill. It helps in job interviews, networking situations, performance reviews, and everyday conversations. Practice describing your own responsibilities using the vocabulary and structures we've discussed today.
Before we finish, I'd love to hear from you. What are your work responsibilities? What job do you do, and what are your main duties? Or if you're a student, what responsibilities do you have in your studies? Leave a comment below and practice describing your responsibilities in English. I read all the comments, and I'd love to hear about what you do. And please, like and subscribe to English Club for more English learning podcasts. We create new episodes regularly to help you improve your English while learning about practical, real-world topics. Your support means everything. Thank you so much for listening today. I want to leave you with one final encouragement. Whatever your work responsibilities are, approach them with excellence. Do your work well. Be reliable. Take initiative. These qualities will serve you well throughout your career, regardless of what specific responsibilities you have at any given time. Your work matters. The tasks you do every day, even the ones that seem small or routine, they contribute to something larger. Take pride in that, and take pride in continually improving how you do your work. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I hope you found this helpful and encouraging. Keep practicing your English, keep developing in your career, and keep being awesome. I'll see you in the next episode. Take care and goodbye.